to episode 5 of Design Review, the podcast for engineering your life. And today I'm really delighted to have Bernadette Fah as my guest. Met Bernadette through LinkedIn, and we're LinkedIn in particular, and I really appreciate what she's about. And so, Bernadette, why don't you say hi and introduce yourself, and then we'll just go have a chat.
Okay, thank you, Robert. My name is Bernadette, and I'm from Singapore. And I am in the middle of my fool around and find out era of life where I do many, many different things to see exactly what's going to happen next. And in relation to meeting Robert and for this particular podcast, I'm really excited because I am focusing on something called maximum viable person. We know the concept of a minimum viable product, right? And one of the things that I wanted to do was to turn that concept around on its head. We understand that so many founders, C-suite people, leaders in organizations and companies try their best to make minimum viable products, right? Things that are scrappy that they can push out to test. But we very often forget what's the most important, the people behind these products. What if at every point in our life, even at our lowest, we had a framework or we had a community or we had something that was able to help us be the most viable that we can be while honoring where we are. So that's kind of where I'm at this point. In real life, when I'm not working on this, I'm a chief of staff and I'm currently under a Canadian company. So that's been also very fun because one of my favorite things to do is to enable people. Very often you hear like, oh, when you're running a race, you want someone on the sides cheering you on. But when you work with me, you get somebody who's running the race with you and shoving a protein bar or a carb gel in your mouth while you're running and telling you to run faster. Let's go. We're going to finish. So my shtick is I threaten you with success.
That is definitely an amazing intro. I love hearing all of that, and it already brings some questions up. And I'll kind of get things rolling the way that we usually do. So, your project around maximum viable person, which like the term like caught my eye before I'd even had a chance to talk to you. And for lots of reasons, including that I've done work around minimum viable products type things. Help me understand what it is that you've experienced that had that show up as something important. What's the process that brought that ultimately that idea into your consciousness and had you say, hey, wait, something's needed here and I got an idea about how to do it. Help us understand what your why is.
Wow, this is a really tough question to answer because it's so multifaceted, right? But I think a lot of it comes from neurodivergence. So I have bipolar disorder and CPTSD. And it's been such a journey with titrating my medication, figuring out new coping mechanisms, trying to live as somebody with bipolar rather than somebody who suffers from bipolar. There's such a big difference, right? That I was thinking one day, sometime in January of 2025, that I had this little epiphany almost, which was that bipolar disorder with its cycles, at least for me, was nature's very own iteration cycle, right? When you are in your hypomanic episodes, because I have bipolar too, so again, I'm not speaking for everybody here. You sprint, you do the work, you move really quick, and then when you're depressed, you tend to take a step back and you rest, and then you sort of try and recalibrate for the next round. And I realized that made me really perfect for the concept of a minimum viable product, right? Because you're in that sprint, you're in that product cycle. And I realized that I had gotten so familiar with my condition and how my condition manifested itself. So again, I can't speak for everybody. that even at my lowest points, when I was depressed, practically an NPC, non-playable character in a video game with 3 lines of dialogue, right? You talk to me, you only get 3 responses. I was making decisions that were able to move the needle without dishonoring the energy levels and the moods and everything where I was. So I was thinking, what if I could do something like that for everybody else? Neurodivergence doesn't just come in bipolar, spicy meatball flavor, right? We have so many ADHD individuals, autistic individuals, dyslexic individuals, and a lot of these conditions have comorbidities with each other, right? What if I could build something that would really help people at their core, which is to honor where they are without feeling like, oh, they're a failure or like, things need to be done in a certain way. And we do things well in a way that, or in their way, the ways that they operate best. And we just sort of take their best and we make that even bester. That's kind of it.
I really like that. And there was a lot the previous times that we've chatted that I felt, a kinship with you, and a lot of this story resonates. I thought I had bipolar disorder for like 35 years. And I was taking lithium the entire time and trying to find stability and a life that wasn't chaotic. What I currently believe is the truth is that I have ADHD and an addictive personality, and I'm a codependent. And when I mix those up in the little kitchen of life, I have found myself having, I at least found myself, I could understand why I had some of the highs, and my highs get very energetic and very creative and sometimes difficult to live around. And the lows were really, for me, really crushing, and which was my motivation for trying to do something about it. As you mentioned, titrating the medication is quite the adventure. And when I found out that I had ADHD, I thought, okay, well, this is the thing that's wrong with me, as if that was always my reaction. Here's my problem. Here's now what I need to do to like spackle over the problem. But of late, and especially with the connection with a bunch of other neurodiverse people, I'm learning, one, to both manage it in a way that's healthy for me, but also I'm learning there's a lot of gifts that come with it. And if all I do is just try and shut it down and be normal, then I'm less of me, less of what is unique and capable about me. So I love that you're looking at finding the way to maximize, vitality and other things inside of the fact that, our population's not all the same, and we're not really supposed to be the same. So I love what you're doing with that. It strikes me personally. Like I have 4 decades of lived experience of trying to find life that worked, and a lot of my life didn't work so well. So awesome. So talk to me about what you've been doing to get this started, and what you're up to. Let's hear what's going on.
Okay. So while I am trying to balance my job and living in a capitalist society, right? I've been working on this behind the scenes. There are currently 2 things that I'm doing at the moment. Maximum Viable Person initially started out as the concept of a product. Now it's sort of evolved into the concept of a product with a community around it, or a separate community in and of itself. In terms of the product, what I've tried to do was to build a digital version of myself. I've tried to build an AI chief of staff where, well, let me put it this way. Have you ever been, at a point where you've been so overwhelmed that you've just said to yourself, man, I wish I had a clone of myself or I had another me to do all the stuff that I didn't want to do? You
Yes.
have, right? Well, the AI chief of staff that I'm trying to build does that. When people say that they want a clone of themselves, what they often actually mean is that they want the real them, wants to do the stuff that they're good at and they know moves the needle. And they want the other clone to do the stuff that they don't like doing, but up to their standards,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what I'm trying to build does that for you because it makes you take a personality test and then it becomes something that is a counterweight to your personality. So if you are more strategic and you have great ideas and you love to move fast, which is the case that when I've spoken to a few founders, especially founders with ADHD, that tends to be what they're like. They love their ideas. It's fantastic because when you hear them talk, the energy is amazing, lovely stuff. But sometimes what can happen is that execution becomes a bit of a challenge. So then you take the personality test. The AI chief of staff ends up becoming more tactical for you by breaking things down into the parts that need to be executed. It prioritizes them for you. It tells you approximately how much time that's going to take. And then it will say, I can take on this, 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 and this. Do you want me to do this for you while you focus on this, this, and this? So that's kind of what I'm building right now. What it also has is that it's also got a dashboard where, as you talk to the AI COS, it pulls out patterns from how you're communicating to say, hey, it seems like you might be rushing towards, overloading yourself, and it's only Wednesday. Maybe we want to take a step back and focus on what we want to do for Thursday and Friday instead. So you don't have to take on the mental load of actually telling it what you need to do. It does it for you, puts it into a visual, and then you're able to decide what you want to do with that. So that's the product that I'm working on. Do you want to discuss that before we move on to the community part, or should I talk about the community first?
Oh man, I want to talk about all of it. So just have to prioritize that. If you want to give us a little bit of a highlight about what the community will be about, then we can come back because I feel there's going to be a lot to dig into. This may be more than one episode by the time we're done, and that's fine. That's how these go sometimes. But yeah, if you, well, I'm going to leave it up to you. But if you'd like to give us kind of like an overview, and then we can dig more into the product. That way, we know here's the 30,000 foot view.
Okay. Well, my biggest belief around this whole thing is that we need to use tools, right? As they evolve, and AI is a tool. But what that will never replace is human connection and a gathering of maximum viable people all in one spot. I think it's really important that we don't necessarily outsource our thinking, but we outsource, and I mean it in the sense that we share a community response and a community responsibility for the individual. What I really believe is that the well-being of the individual is actually a collective responsibility. And if we have a collective of people who are like us, who have been through perhaps, issues, circumstances, so on and so forth that we are going through now, they can reach out a hand and help pull us up the step ladder. And if we could do that for everybody, then I think that's going to be really significant. One of the things that really changed in my early 20s was the concept of bringing people to the table, right? When I grew up quite poor. We worked very hard without government assistance to get to where we are today. I've been working since I was 12 years old, right? And I always fought for a seat at the table. I always felt that I had to justify my talents, my capabilities, everything in order to sit at the table. And in my early 20s, and I remember I was asleep at the time, and I woke up because this huge idea had just sort of come into my head out of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
which is that who the hell decides to set the rules to bring people to the table? Who decides how the table is built? It was an extremely huge revelation for my baby 20-something-year-old brain at the time, because obviously I thought I had like a signal from the universe going, wow, right?
Yeah.
Could have been a manic episode, who knows? But hey, I think it was a good neuron changing like thought. And then I decided I don't want to play the game. I want to have a table that grows bigger by virtue of the people naturally coming to it, like a huge buffet. I want people to come in, bring their potluck of experience, skills, everything, put it on the table and say, come and eat. And they will eat from everybody else's dishes. And everybody, by nature of who they are, gets a seat at the table. And the only thing that you have to do is to contribute. And I thought that that was a far more equitable way of doing it, rather than relying on somebody to bring you to a pre-existing table. So that's kind of the why of the community. And I've rambled enough.
Oh, no, rambling is that's where the really sweet stuff is. First of all, awesome. I love that. It reminds me of a number of things. One of the things it reminds me of is like what's been happening with the whole weird LinkedIn phenomenon, where, it's basically become a welcoming, supportive, open, diverse community where anybody that wants to be a part of it, and it's by attraction, not promotion, is welcomed in with open arms to contribute, to be contributed to. And it's a joy to do that. So I support that model. One, because I've always wanted to feel as a part of something. And one of the greatest joys I've experienced in life is being able to contribute to others. And I love the organic nature of what you're describing. This isn't somebody setting up something that they believe is, perfect, which is interesting because that harkens back to the whole minimum viable product concept of put something out there and let the market help it find its center. I love your motivation, and I love the insight that drove that. And yeah, who is to decide? And I've learned through my life that I tried to heal on my own most of my life, but when I found the recovery community, which is an incredibly supportive set of people, I found out that the recovery I needed involved real support and understanding of other people that are like facing similar stuff. So awesome. I think that's a wonderful overview of that. And so now, if you would like to, let's dig into the product.
Okay, it's actually prototyped now. I've released the prototype, and the prototype is basically MacGyvered from two prototypes. So I am not a technical person by any means. When I graduated from university, I had a business degree, and I cut my teeth on basically everything but tech and finance, right? One, because I can't count on anything beyond my 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. So I would accidentally commit fraud, right? That is not great. And then I didn't do tech because it just didn't interest me at the time. But now it is very interesting to me. So I have prototyped it with what everyone likes to call vibe coding. But of course, I am I am aware, of course, of the things like technical debt, so on and so forth. So I am looking for a tech co-founder if anybody is interested. And so that's how it's been prototyped so far. And then I also have a custom GPT that you talk to as part of your AI chief of staff first. And I've named her Bern GPT, short for Bern. And she is an affectionately foul-mouthed, provider of comforting goblin energy, a bit feral, but does not suck up to you kind of thing. And she's been quite fun so far. The feedback has been pretty good on that aspect. It's been interesting because one of the things that we want to focus on, obviously, when we put out a prototype, is to see how people are using and what people are using it for, right? And the intention, obviously, was to have people use it more from a work perspective, but people have been using it more for a personal perspective as well. And they've reported that it makes them actually genuinely feel good. I won't get into the moral and the discussions, the ethical discussions around using AI as things like your therapist or your helper or whatever.
Yeah.
That is a separate conversation.
Yes.
I have views with a capital V, but we will see how that goes. Yeah, so that's kind of where the product is right now. I am collecting feedback and trying to see if there's traction.
Well, I'm interested in many, many ways. Among them that like I've been using AI more than anything else in a capacity like this, where in fact I just opened up with a conversation today. I call mine Adam. But I said good morning, and then it asked me some questions, and then I just shared what's going on, and then had some suggestions. And I have found that I won't even call it a devil's advocate, because it's not like trying to anticipate what might go wrong. It's more like an engaged internal conversation, which is kind of what you're talking about anyway, is like, take some of my attitudes and put them into a structure such that it will like work with me and ask, well, one, before we go very far, when you're into beta test, and it sounds like you are, I volunteer. I'm like really interested. And I would use it mostly for work, but my work and my life overlap a lot. I'm retired, but I retired in air quotes. I mean, it doesn't look like I'm retired, but I'm very interested in having that kind of support, because my ADHD brain gets distracted and gets obsessed on what it really wants to do. And I would love to have some help and support. And just this kind of conversation, even what I'm imagining right now, I'm already finding very helpful for me. And so I'm like super interested in what you're creating here.
Would you like me to show you the demo? I can share my screen and I can walk you through it right now.
Oh yeah, let's do that. That would be awesome.
Great. Let me do that.
I haven't done screen shares on a podcast yet. This will be a first.
Well, neither have I. So this is interesting because one is now trying to fix their settings. So give me like a moment.
Sure, no problem.
And let's see. Can you see it?
Not. Oh, wait, coming up. Yeah, I can.
Great. So this is my AI chief of staff, right? And affectionately, I call her Bern GPT. And this was actually spun up using Lovable. And it's not perfect, but here's how it works, right? You take a personality test, right? Bern GPT reads it and she's like, oh, okay, this person's more strategic. I'm going to be more tactical. Then as you use her, she becomes more, she tracks your behaviors and your decisions, and then she gives you insight, right? And then there's an intelligent conversation interface, so it feels like you're talking to a real person, right? My big problem that I was trying to solve again was that we want to do the stuff that we're good at, but we don't. But and we also want somebody to do the stuff that we're bad at, but to our standards.
Yes.
So this is what I was trying to solve. But let's go to the important part, which is we want to try the demo, right? And so what happens is there's a personality test here first. So let's quickly go through this. So what's your first instinct if there's a critical deadline, but you notice a fundamental flaw in the design approach? For me, what I would do is, if it's a fundamental flaw, I would redesign it. And then if it's a meeting, things are going around in a circle. Let me just quickly go through this test, right? So basically what this work style assessment is, this personality test, is that it gives you scenarios, very common scenarios, and some common reactions, and then it basically quickly tells you what you are. In my case, I'm a tactical executor, and so now what my Burn GPT will do is that she will basically be telling me that, I'm more tactical, but she will be more strategic on my behalf, right? So then once this has been done, I go to the AI chief of staff, right? Because it's a MacGyver duct-taped prototype, this takes you to actually like Burn GPT, but I want to show you the real fun part, which is the dashboard. So this is your cognitive and execution patterns at a glance. So this point here, right, the key pain points from your discussion, right, is as you talk to her about everything and anything, she pulls up the most important things at any one time. So this, in this case, for the sake of the demo, is about marketing and product development. But it could be anything else, and you don't have to write these pain points down yourself. It automatically gets pulled into a dashboard, and then automatically suggestions come out and how you want to do it. And later, the full version will basically say, I can take X, Y, and Z off your hands for you.
Wow.
And then you get your behavioral patterns. So you overplan on Mondays, you get stuck on Wednesday, you prioritize things, but do you want to actually do something about it, or do you want to do something else? And then it tells you, okay, so here's your working style, like, evolution. Here's what your execution patterns are like. What's really draining you? What are you focused on? And what do you procrastinate on? And that is MVP, the product. It's the MVP of the MVP. Well, it's not. It's a prototype. There we go.
I love it. There's too many things that I love about it. I'm just going to end up like swamping you with questions and interest as we roll. But all right. So you said people are trying this. How many people are testing this right now?
So I've gotten about 15 pieces of feedback so far. So that's 15 proper tests done. And then we are still waiting on a few more to come back to me. Then I want to see, obviously, the biggest test of everything, which is whether or not someone's going to be willing to pay for that and how much people are willing to pay for it. One of the great things about the feedback that I've gotten so far is that they're from people I know, but proof of relationship is not proof of concept, right? Yeah. And for me, the biggest challenge as somebody who's been in the VC and the startup space for about 13 years now is getting your first dollar from a stranger. So that's kind of where I am from a very, very sort of like business mindset. But the Bernadette is just very excited that people are like using it and using it for really silly stuff. Yeah. And I am down with it.
I'm going to ask some of the silly questions because I need to. So like, what's the weirdest thing somebody has used this for?
So besides, sorry?
What has surprised you?
People have been using it to validate their work decisions and validate how they feel about their work decisions, actually. I thought it would be more of a working partner sort of thing. So like, you do this, I do this, this is what's missing, this is what needs to happen next. I'm getting a lot of, hey, Bern, do you think that this is the right way to go forward? And they are looking for both a combination of this part is a good part, this part's not a good part. So that's been quite interesting so far because I thought it would be very much more of a task-oriented back and forth. But it kind of fits because when I was doing the user research and when I was interviewing people, a lot of them said that basically when they are not in a good place and they still need to get stuff done, they need somebody to tell them whether or not the stuff that they're doing actually makes sense and is good for whatever that concept of good is. So there also needs to be a lot of, well, running the marathon with them and shoving the carb gel and the protein bar in their mouth,
Yeah.
but also very affectionately threatening them with success.
I love that. And, you know, I love when you get feedback that's not what you expected.
Yeah.
When it's just what you expected, then you wonder if you'd like prepped them to give you that feedback and like you're just telling me what I want, which actually brings up one of the topics that I've been reading about, and that's the tendency of AI agents to tell you what you want to hear and not challenge you. How are you dealing with that, or do you even experience that? I mean, part of what you set this model up to do in the first place was to basically balance you out. So by its nature, and I'm not a technical expert, I'm not the person you're seeking, but you know, but by its nature, it's going to essentially kind of question, especially when you get farther out on your fringes. Like I'm a visionary and I can get all into concept, but not at all into execution. That's like, I partner really well with execution people. That brings up a whole other topic I'll save for later. But I'm interested, how do you prevent it from basically telling you things you want to hear?
Right. So the short answer is I do my best and cross my fingers and hope for the best. Because the way it's been prompted is to be the opposite of you. And there is a bit in it that basically says do not suck up to people and to always provide a counterbalance. So whether or not it's a viewpoint or whether or not it's something you're missing, there will always be a hole poked in whatever it is you're presenting. Again, it's not perfect, right? Because I'm still learning how this works. It's a prototype. I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to make sure these things are done well. But ideally, what you get is one day you get an actual digital version of me that really tells you that, hey, I love this part. I think this part makes sense. We need to work here. And what you're really missing is this.
I love
So it's
that.
always going to be a 3-part framework so that we get that validation, we get that execution part, and then we get our blind spot illuminated. So,
And that's one of the things that's been, from what I understand, largely missing from just using, you know, Chat GPT or fill your AI engine blank here as a guide, because what people are seeing is that they have to, like, even under commands to not be agreeable, it tends to still be agreeable. So I'm pretty fascinated about that. I definitely am. Would it be possible for me to be considered on your beta test list when that
here,
time?
I'll by all means go ahead. I'll walk you through the testing protocol, and I'd love to get your feedback on that as well. Really, yeah.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that after we're done. Although I have a feeling, well, also conscious of time. We've got, you know, maybe another 10 minutes here, and so I want to hear about, you know, what's not been going well, what's been going well, and what your future looks like. But before we close, I want to make sure that your requests for example, a technical co-founder, that we get really clear about what you'd be looking for, because I don't know who's going to get to watch this, but it's entirely possible that somebody watches this after the fact and says, "Oh, I want in. I want to be a part of that." So I want to make sure that that's pretty clear. So before we get to that, I just want to prep you. I'm going to ask for what your needs are by the time we're done here. But at the moment, tell me a little bit about, what's gone really well and what has not on this process, and then we'll kind of look towards the future.
Sure. What's gone really well is that I actually managed to prototype the thing because I'm very busy. I am exhausted all the time. Um, and I feel like I'm consistently on a downswing right now. Like I am in the middle of this bit here and I am holding on with my teeth. I'm sure you are very aware of what that feels like. So the fact that it's been done and that I'm not pressuring myself to, adhere to a particular timeline, I think that's been pretty good. For me, the mark of a founder is when they start getting traction. And I think for me, I will not call myself a founder. To me, this is still a project until there is some significant traction that I have to decide what to do with later on.
Mm-hmm.
What's not been going so well is the fact that it's being done on my own timeline and it's not being done to like a fixed timeline because it's like, I am so tired. Existing is very hard and I live in a system. So there is that. And also, while theoretically I know what my metrics for traction are and how to go about getting them, and actually setting up the protocols to make sure that I get the results that I want, I also need another me to slap me to say, do it. And that is my problem. I'm sure you are aware.
Oh yeah, that's a very resonant. My business has been in existence and licensed for a year. And I have the luxury and curse of not needing the income. And so I've been doing a lot of laying foundation necessary, but I'm currently putting balls in play that are going to make me, including hiring a virtual assistant, for example. And so, yeah, I'm now setting life up in ways that are actually kind of uncomfortable for me because they're going to have me be accountable for these things that I want to do. Luckily, I absolutely love what I'm creating, and the passion you have for this. And I love that it's more than the product, and it's more than the revenue. You haven't mentioned revenue much at all. At some point, you're going to need to, otherwise you're not going to have a sustainable organization. So that's a necessary thing. But you're interested in what it takes to have it actually solve your problem. And you're very much in the awareness of what it is you're trying to solve, in part because you're living it. And I honestly think some of the most amazing creations come from people that needed to solve their own problem. And so I acknowledge and applaud you for that. And it's also really resonant. That's my business is the same thing. I mean, I fought hard for decades to find sanity, stability, and any lasting joy in my life. And now that I've gone through the really hard work to do that, now I want to give that to other people. So, I definitely, a lot of resonance with that. So appreciate the challenge that's gotten you here. Appreciate where you are. So there's two more questions. One is what's next? And the last one is what do you need? And I'd like you to be as explicit, wish listy as you want to be. And we'll see who bites once they get to watch this.
Yeah. Well, what comes next is I take some time out to sit down and actually do the thing as far as I can do it. Because when it comes to the startup process, the 0 to 1, that's something that I'm the most familiar with. But I have a lot of blind spots as well, right? So a lot of it is about trying to make sure that I keep moving so that these things naturally get illuminated. And I know that this is very much a personal skill issue thing, right? Because you actually have to do the thing. What I really need is somebody who is a little bit more tech-minded, who's able to help me with the architecture and the stack, and to see what it's like from the tech and business perspective. I'm not stupid enough to be like, oh, I just want to focus on the business and you can focus on the tech. No, I think both people, especially in the early stages, need to be very aware of both sides. So I too am educating myself for that. And then the other thing that I would love to hear from our B2B marketers, because if we are to really talk about revenue, and if we really are to talk about a sustainable business, it's not the B2C that's the generator, it's the B2B option, right?
Yeah.
And for me, what's going to be interesting is I would love to have founders and C-suite people actually test her out, maybe, buy her one day. But the real value here is if you are a VC or if you are an incubator, an accelerator, so on and so forth, you have a vested interest to see your portfolio succeed. What if you had a dashboard for your, say, 16 members of your portfolio, and you got to see where they are struggling at any one time so that you, as an investor or whatever, can run interference to make sure that they are successful? And
I
that's
hadn't
really where the thing
thought
is.
of that. That's next, literally next level. It also reminds me of what I was going to pull up before. I don't know if you've ever read The Six Working Geniuses by Pat Lencioni. It's one of many, many type testing kinds of things, but it was one thing to find out what type you are. And I found out like I'm a visionary person that enables people. Those are my geniuses. But the power of that work is in building teams that are effective, given the different strengths of the team. And it turns out that if you build a team that are all the same, they're not very effective. And so there's certain, like I find I partner really well with execution people that have an understanding of mission, but I do a good job of doing that visionary work. And then if I get somebody who's going to like go through the checklist for me, we get amazing things done. I've had examples of that in my life. So what you're talking about is applying this tool through the dashboard, which is a wonderful visual of what's going on for an organization. And all right, I mean, I love the idea and what you're about before that. That's a whole other ball game. So back to what you need. You're interested in a tech co-founder person that has business understanding and engagement. Do you have a skill set that you're looking for, or somebody that, I mean, clearly this is an AI development tool. Do you have specifics?
I would love to be able to work with someone who's obviously got the experience that I lack, and who's patient enough to deal with a lot of stupid questions as I try to learn more about the tech as well. I think what's going to be really important is somebody who is, and I don't like to say this also because I feel like it's an unnecessary role for them to play. But if I could have someone who also knows how to bring me up to speed with what it means to have certain kinds of architecture, what it means to what's the bare minimum that I need to know for the tech in order for me to make good business decisions, right? I think that would be really beneficial because I'm not a founder.
Yeah.
I've worked with founders for 13 years. I have a vague understanding of what that's like. But doing it is very different from helping someone do it.
Yeah.
And as a chief of staff, I help people do the things, right? Because I already know what their vision is, so I can just execute things. It's common sense to me. But when I'm in that position, I will need somebody else to help me come up to speed. So I feel really bad for
Well,
saying that,
well,
but I do need like a kind of like a mentor in that space as well.
and that makes sense. Well, it may be that this comes from more than one person. So,
Yeah.
you may have folks that would just love to share with you some of their thoughts and background and just coffee chat, and then you may have somebody that covers all these bases. If you're not too attached to what this help looks like,
Yeah.
I think you're going to have a lot easier time finding it. But I have a feeling that, kind of like I experienced when I put the hook in the water looking for help, that you'll find plenty of help, and then it will be the challenge up to you to decide, oh, wow, do I have enough time to support the help that's coming in? But there's a lot worse problems to have.
Yes, it's a blessed problem to have so much help. It is a wonderful problem.
Well, I'm going to put out into the universe that this conversation, one, brings awareness of you, what you're up to, and what you're doing, what you're trying to create, and the people that either know or know other people that find their way to you. So the last major question, and this is one I want to also put on the write-up, is like, how do people find you? Where do they go to get your information? What are the routes?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can contact me via email. Yeah, the usual.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that I have that information when it's time to post the podcast. This has been wonderful and has exceeded my expectations for what we were going to be able to talk about. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Bernadette. Any last words before we bring this to a close?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Robert. You've been really kind, and I've always appreciated how you reach out to me and keep me in the loop with what you're doing. And thank you very much for exposing me to your side of the community as well. I think it's very kind of you, and I hope to be able to do the same for you one day.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, my friend. I so look forward to hearing more. And I'm also looking forward to getting with you separate from this to get into the beta. If people are interested, like I am, in doing the beta work, same thing, just reach out to you and let you know.
Yeah, there's a testing protocol, but if you just want to play around with it, the prototype URL is actually available on my LinkedIn already.
Okay. Well, I will have people swarming in your direction as much as possible. Can't promise. I don't have a huge following yet, but they're growing. So again, thank you so very much. I am also going to plant the seed that we get to check in again when you're at another phase of the business, so that we can learn and share more about how that's going. Are you okay with that?
I would love that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. Thank you for getting up at the early hour to be able to be on this with me.